The Wise Owl's Guidance. Once upon a time, in a forest filled with tall trees and fluttering leaves, there lived an owl named Ollie. Ollie was a wise old owl who lived in a tall oak tree, with branches that spread out wide and a cozy nest at the very top. From his perch, Ollie had a perfect view of the entire forest, and he spent his days watching over all the creatures that called it home. Ollie was known throughout the forest for his wisdom and his kindness. All the animals would come to him with their problems, seeking his advice and his guidance. Ollie was always happy to help, offering his knowledge and his insight to anyone who needed it. One day, as Ollie was perched on a branch, watching the leaves rustle in the wind, he heard a soft rustling sound coming from below. He looked down to see a little mouse scurrying through the underbrush, looking lost and afraid. "Excuse me, sir," the mouse said timidly. "Could you please help me find my way home?" Ollie smiled kindly and hooted softly, "Of course, little one. I'll do my best to help you." Ollie spread his wings and flew down to the forest floor, where he landed gracefully beside the mouse. Together, they set off on a journey through the forest, with Ollie leading the way. As they walked, Ollie pointed out all the different trees and plants, teaching the little mouse about the forest and its secrets. He showed the mouse how to tell the difference between a berry that was safe to eat and one that was poisonous, and he warned him about the dangers of wandering too far from home. The little mouse listened intently to Ollie's words, hanging on every piece of advice he gave. And as they walked, he began to realize just how wise and kind Ollie truly was. Finally, after a long journey through the forest, Ollie and the little mouse arrived at the mouse's home. The mouse was overjoyed to have found his way back, and he turned to Ollie with gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you so much for your help, sir," he said. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Ollie smiled kindly and hooted softly, "It was my pleasure, little one. Always remember, if you ever need help, you can always come to me. I'll be here to guide you." And with that, Ollie spread his wings and flew back up to his perch in the tall oak tree, watching over the forest once again with his wise, watchful eyes. Ollie was known throughout the forest for his wisdom and his ability to see things that others could not. He spent his days perched high up in a tall oak tree, watching over the animals and the land. From his vantage point, he could see everything that was happening in the forest, and he always knew just what to do to help when there was trouble. One day, a young rabbit named Robbie was playing near the edge of the forest when he stumbled upon a small, glittering object on the ground. It was a shiny red gem, and Robbie was fascinated by its beauty. He picked it up and admired it, turning it over in his paws. But just as he was about to put the gem in his pocket and continue on his way, he heard a voice behind him. "Hello there, little one," said Ollie. "What have you found?" Robbie turned around and saw the wise old owl perched on a nearby branch. "It's a gem, Mr. Owl," he said excitedly. "Isn't it beautiful?" Ollie nodded. "Yes, it is indeed a beautiful thing," he said. "But be careful with it, Robbie. Sometimes things that seem too good to be true really are." Robbie didn't quite understand what Ollie meant, but he nodded anyway and carefully put the gem in his pocket. As he continued on his way through the forest, he couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. What did Ollie mean by his warning? And why did he seem so wise and all-knowing? That night, as Robbie settled into his cozy burrow for the night, he couldn't stop thinking about the shiny red gem. He pulled it out of his pocket and looked at it again, admiring its sparkle. But then he remembered Ollie's warning. He wondered if he should give the gem back, but he didn't want to part with its beauty. He decided to ask Ollie for advice the next day. The next morning, Robbie made his way back to the spot where he had found the gem. He looked up into the tall oak tree, but he couldn't see Ollie anywhere. "Mr. Owl?" he called out. "Are you there?" There was no answer. Just as he was about to give up and head back home, he heard a soft hooting sound coming from high up in the tree. "Up here, Robbie," called Ollie's voice. Robbie looked up and saw the wise old owl perched high up in the branches. "I have a question, Mr. Owl," said Robbie. "I found this gem yesterday, and I don't know what to do with it." Should I keep it or give it back? Ollie thought for a moment before responding. Robbie, my dear friend, the answer to that question depends on many things, he said. You must consider where the gem came from and who it belongs to. You must also consider why you want to keep it and what the consequences of your actions might be. Robbie listened carefully, trying to take in all of Ollie's wise words. But most of all, Robbie, Ollie continued, you must trust your own instincts. You know what is right and wrong in your heart. Follow that instinct, and you will always make the right decision. With that, Ollie flew off into the forest, leaving Robbie to ponder his words. As the sun started to set, Ollie stretched his wings and prepared to take off. Thank you, Mrs. Rabbit, he said. I appreciate your hospitality, but it's time for me to get back to my tree. Mrs. Rabbit nodded understandingly. Of course, Ollie. You're welcome here anytime. With that, Ollie took off into the sky, the wind rustling through his feathers. He soared higher and higher, enjoying the feeling of the cool night air rushing past him. As he flew, Ollie thought about all the things he had learned during his visit with Mrs. Rabbit. He thought about the importance of kindness and generosity, and about the value of hard work and perseverance. He realized that every animal in the forest had something to teach him, and that he could learn something new every day if he just kept his eyes and ears open. And with that, Ollie felt more wise and grateful than ever before. As the days passed, Ollie watched over the animals in the jungle and gave them advice when they needed it. He became known as the wisest creature in the jungle, and many of the animals came to him for guidance. One day, as Ollie was perched in a tall tree, he noticed a young rabbit named Ruby who seemed very sad. What's wrong, Ruby? Ollie asked kindly. I lost my favorite carrot, Ruby sniffled. I've looked everywhere for it, but I can't find it. Ollie thought for a moment and then said, Ruby, sometimes we lose things that are important to us. But remember, what's important is not the thing itself, but the memories and feelings it brings us. You'll always have the memory of how much you loved that carrot, and that's what really matters. Ruby thought about Ollie's words and felt a little bit better. She thanked him and went on her way, feeling grateful for his wise advice. From that day forward, Ollie became known not just as the wisest creature in the jungle, but also as a kind and compassionate friend to all who needed him. And even though he was just an owl, he had a big heart and a wise soul that touched the lives of everyone he met. As the days passed, Ollie's reputation as a wise and knowledgeable owl spread throughout the forest. Other animals began to seek him out for advice, and Ollie was happy to share his wisdom with anyone who asked. One day, a family of rabbits came to Ollie's tree, seeking his help. The youngest rabbit, a little kit named Rosie, had wandered off into the forest and hadn't returned. Her family was worried and didn't know where to look. Ollie listened carefully to the rabbit's story and then closed his eyes, deep in thought. After a few moments, he opened his eyes and said, I think I know where Rosie might be. Follow me. The rabbits followed Ollie as he flew through the trees, using his sharp eyes to scan the ground below. After a few minutes, he spotted a small burrow hidden beneath a bush. He flew down and peered inside, and there was Rosie, safe and sound. The rabbits were overjoyed and thanked Ollie for his help. Rosie was especially grateful, and she looked up at Ollie with admiration in her eyes. You're so wise and clever, Ollie, she said. How did you know where to find me? Ollie smiled and said, It's all about observing and paying attention, Rosie. The forest is full of clues and signs, and if you know what to look for, you can solve any problem. Rosie nodded, impressed by Ollie's wisdom. From that day on, she looked up to Ollie as a mentor and friend, and Ollie continued to share his knowledge and guidance with all the creatures of the forest. One day, as Ollie was flying over the jungle, he spotted a group of animals gathered around a tree, all chattering excitedly. Curious, Ollie flew down to investigate. As he landed on a branch near the tree, he heard a frantic voice coming from inside. Help! Somebody help me! Ollie peered into the tree and saw a tiny bird, trapped in a spider web. The bird was struggling to free herself, but the sticky web seemed to be holding her fast. Without hesitation, Ollie swooped down and began to carefully unravel the web with his beak. The tiny bird looked up at him with gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you so much," she chirped. "I thought I was going to be stuck there forever." Ollie smiled kindly at her. "It's my pleasure, little one. Just doing my part to help out." With the web now undone, the little bird was able to fly free. She soared up into the sky, chirping happily as she went. Ollie watched her go with a sense of pride and contentment. As he took off into the sky himself, Ollie couldn't help but reflect on the wisdom he had gained over his long life. He knew that the most important thing in life was to help others, to be kind and compassionate, and to always be willing to lend a helping wing. As the sun began to set, Ollie flew back to his tree and settled onto his perch. He knew that it was time for him to rest and reflect on all that he had learned throughout the day. As he closed his eyes, he felt a sense of contentment wash over him. He knew that he had done his best to help others and to share his wisdom with those who needed it. And so, Ollie continued to live his life as a wise old owl, sharing his knowledge and his kindness with all the animals of the forest. He knew that he had much to learn, but he was eager to face every new challenge and to help others along the way. And as he drifted off to sleep, he felt grateful for the many blessings in his life and for the opportunity to make a positive difference in the world. I hope you enjoyed the story and that it sparked your imagination and curiosity. Remember, there's always another tale waiting to be discovered and explored. Until next time, keep reading and let your imagination run wild.